Hello, everyone. I'm Donna Fiducia.
And I'm Don Neuen. And this is Cowboy Logic Radio.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. When their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glance. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance.
And welcome to Cowboy Logic.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Don Neuen, and let me be the first to welcome you to tonight's riveting episode of Cowboy Logic Radio. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern. Do you know what that means? I thought you would.
What?
It's Don Neuen with Cowboy Logic Radio featuring the beautiful Donna Fiducia.
Are you done?
Nope.
Okay.
No, because there's a couple of things that I do need to speak about. First of all, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to thank our digital flagship station, Talk America Radio, found at talkamericaradio.us, Ron Phillips and his entire family. We're grateful to all of you, and we hope that the network will be up and running shortly. We did speak with Ron this past week, and it appears that he is making headway with the insurance companies and his claims for the lightning bolt strike on their home that caught it on fire and ruined the studios. So that's good news, right, Donna Fiducia?
Yes, excellent news.
Thank you for agreeing with me. We would also like to acknowledge our terrestrial affiliates, and for those of you that don't know what a terrestrial affiliate is, that's like an AM/FM radio station.
Terrestrial.
Terrestrial, correct. We've got WDDQ Talk 92.1 FM out of South Georgia. We've got WJHC 107.5 out of North Florida. And we've got our little friends and family that are here in West Georgia with the new powerhouse that's not only serving West Georgia, but also East Alabama. And that's WLBB 1330 AM and the new powerhouse 106.3 FM. Steve Graddick and the clan over there at Graddick Communications, they are doing stellar work to bring people like me, Don Neuen, to you out here in West Georgia. Hey, we also need to acknowledge the official Italian restaurant of Cowboy Logic Radio, Milano's Pizza, down in LaGrange, Georgia. Now, this past weekend, well, it wasn't really a weekend, was it, Donna? It was last Thursday. We went down there with Rocky Stucci.
And Rocky used to own an Italian restaurant, so he knows what he's talking about. He knows for once he speaks.
Rocky, again, was silenced. Yes. And we know that whenever Rocky's silent, he's enjoying his meal. And he thoroughly enjoyed his meal. Matt Locke behaved semi-well. And Ron Phillips was shoving coconut cream cake or whatever that was.
Of which I just finished about 15 minutes ago.
It's massive, ladies and gentlemen. If you want servings that you will not finish, take the trip down Highway 27 South toward LaGrange to Milano's Pizza. And we would like to thank Adam and all of the wonderful wait staff and cooks at Milano's for once again serving unbelievable Italian food. Now, Donna.
Don.
I got to talk about Lee's alma mater, and that's Holy Ground Baptist Academy.
That's my stepson, your son, Lee.
My oldest son, Lee, who attended Holy Ground.
Yes.
And played football for Holy Ground the first year they ever had a team. And at that point, it was a 12-man football team.
They did very well.
Yep. But I got a little mouse named Paige Runnels.
In other words, the pastor's wife.
Who's given me some information. Okay? Because I read about this past weekend because I don't watch the NFL anymore. And I'm starting to not watch college because those schmucks kneel too. And so I'm going to have to resort to high school football that insists that their players do not kneel during the national anthem.
And good for them.
And I can tell you this. While we have not been to a Holy Ground football game this year, I would bet the farm on the fact that there's not a player on that team that kneels during the national anthem.
But they kneel at the end of the game in prayer.
That's right. At the 50-yard line. Yep. So anyway, here's the deal. Holy Ground now has an 8-man football team. Mm-hmm. Now, I've never played 8-man. I always played 12-man or 11-man football team. Okay? And the thing is, 8-man's got to be really tough because you only got like half the blockers and everybody's got to run a lot further.
And everybody gets beaten up. Yeah.
Well, here's the deal. Holy Ground won its 3rd state championship.
Yay!
That's awesome.
Yay!
And this is the 2nd year in a row that they've had perfect seasons. Now,
wow.
For any of the liberals that are listening, what that means is they didn't lose any ball games.
No losses.
Okay, a perfect season is an undefeated season, kind of like the Miami Dolphins back when I was 7.
Yep.
Okay? Now, for those of you that are out in West Georgia, and especially those of you that want to come say hi to Donna Fiducia, we're probably going to be at this game on Friday night because Holy Ground plays Cross Point Christian for the GICAA Bowl. Now, what is that? Georgia Independent Christian Athletic Association.
Oh.
Okay. The bowl game is this Friday night at the Stallion Field in Rooteville at 7:30 p.m. sharp.
The newly renovated, well, it's been a couple of years now, Stallion Field, right around the corner from our farm, actually.
That's right. So those of you that want to come out and say hello to Donna Fiducia and have me take your picture with her, come on down Friday night.
No, you want to watch the football game.
Well, yeah, but I won't pace the sidelines like I used to when Lee was playing there. Anyhow, Cross Point is the Division I state champ. Holy Ground is the Division II state champ. So there's going to be a lot of hard hitting, I'm going to assume. If there's not, I will be highly disappointed. And I'm going to tell you right now, if there's any players that kneel, I am out of there.
That's not going to happen.
Good deal?
That's not going to happen.
Donna, what looks Italian and travels at 119 miles an hour?
Oh, I know. That would be one Janine Pirro.
That would be one correct answer because she's not Italian, but she does look Italian.
Actually, she's a Lebanese Christian.
That's right. But she was traveling at 119 miles an hour.
A mafioso guy, too, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
That's why she's got an Italian name. Yes, 119 miles an hour in a 65 mile an hour zone at 1:15 in the afternoon. This isn't even at night in upstate New York in a town called Nichols in Tioga County.
Now,
in a Cadillac. See, here's what I think happened. You know, Cadillacs, they're smooth. She probably couldn't tell how fast she was going.
If you're traveling 119 miles an hour, you know you're going fast, okay? Because everybody else is like being passed at lights. They're blurs is what they are.
I would venture to say Janine Pirro is going to have her day in court.
I would say Janine Pirro will probably somehow figure out a way to talk her way out of this ticket.
That's true. Other people who will have their day in court.
Well, wait a minute. Hold on. Let's go back to
Charlie
119. Hold on.
Al Franken.
Hold on. 119 miles an hour. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we have a friend that works with me that is in the studio tonight, and his name is Connor O'Brien. Connor O'Brien. He's a nice Jewish boy from Brooklyn, I think. Yeah, Connor O'Brien.
No, that would be from Boston in the North End.
That's right.
Yes.
Now, in a little while, he and Donna are going to speak Bostonian with you.
Well, I'll talk New York, and he'll talk Boston.
Okay. But Connor is a professional driver. He holds a CDL Class A with a P endorsement.
Which means he can go with passengers.
That's correct. It also means that if Connor was caught driving 119 miles an hour in a 65 mile an hour speed zone,
his ass is grass and you're a lawnmower.
What would happen? He would lose his license. Okay?
I think Janine Pirro's about to.
Yeah,
I'm
but
surprised she doesn't get chauffeured around. I guess she likes to drive.
Clearly fast. Hey, so what else is going on? You're talking about Charlie Rose. He's like 113 years old, and he's been accused of sexual harassment. 8
women, lewd calls, nudity, and groping.
I'm going to barf.
Al Franken has another woman who's come forward. Now, the Senate Ethics Committee is where all ethics goes to die.
Senate Ethics Committee.
Yeah, what a joke.
What is the word that is?
An oxymoron.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the thing is, first of all, anytime
that's like Senate intelligence,
right? That's military intelligence. That's
now military I can hang with.
No,
but the
you
Senate,
know what? I remember actually driving outside D.C. one day and seeing the CIA Center for George W. Bush Intelligence, or whatever it is. The George W. Bush CIA Center for Intelligence.
I bet there's a lot of strategery that goes on there,
I'm thinking to myself, seriously? Anyhow,
were you driving 119 miles an hour?
No, I was not. I was not driving 119 miles an hour in a 65-mile-an-hour zone. But here's the deal.
Judge Janine.
So this idiot, the turtle,
Mitch McConnell.
Mitch McConnell is going, we need to have that. We need to have
that. That does sound like him.
Investigation on Al Franken. Anytime they have an investigation of ethics, first of all, Senate ethics is an oxymoron. And third of all, anytime they have anything that could be unethical, it goes to the Senate Ethics Committee and dies.
Well, and there's a non-disclosure agreement signed, so you can't ever talk about it.
They are not going to indict their own. It's just stupid. But
hey, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't figured it out, this first segment is my job. My task
is to get me off anytime I try to get to the news.
That's right. I distract Donna.
Yes.
I interrupt her. I try to make her laugh because, for the entire time she was at Fox News, she successfully never laughed on the air unless she was supposed to.
Right.
Okay. But there have been numerous times that I've made you laugh so hard that you actually thought you might.
You know what in my pants?
Yeah.
Maybe another 10 years from now that would be the case.
I wouldn't even have to make you laugh.
Anyhow, the LAPD.
Hold on a second, but I was going to say something relevant.
What?
Last night on my drive home, after my sit rep from Denise Simon, I was listening to a rerun of Mark Levin. I found it on one of the other channels that plays it later.
Did he laugh uncontrollably?
No. But he did make fun of Susan Collins, the mental midget from Maine.
Oh, my gosh.
First thing he said is that, that's right. He made her say,
Norman, don't forget.
That's what he said. He said she sounds like Katharine Hepburn.
Norman.
And then he played a soundbite, and it did. She sounded just.
We really should keep the Obamacare, and we should make sure that the rich people pay more taxes.
I really think Donald Trump ought to make the Senate and the congressmen pay for their own health care. Then you'll see something get done.
Well, we've been whining about that for years,
Yeah,
Donna.
but the problem is Obamacare, seriously, has been backloaded to implode this year, next year, and the year after. This is the big problem.
Wonder why they did it that way, Donna.
Yeah, really. Because you've got mental midgets up there now saying, it's Donald Trump's fault that I have to pay all this extra money.
Don't forget the blueberries, Norman.
Actually, Rush Limbaugh today had a guy on, or yesterday it was, I guess. I forget. I'm losing track of time. Had a guy on talking about his deductible and what is going on as far as a family with healthy children, a family of 4 with parents in their 30s paying $35,000 or more a year in health care with this is the new compliant now, with $8,500 deductible. Why bother? What you should do is pay the penalty, try to discipline yourself to save that $35,000 a year. Hope you don't get really sick in the next couple of years. Now you've got a couple $100,000 slush fund that would pay for a catastrophic event. I mean, that's really what it's getting to.
Or just get Liberty Health Share.
Well, you can do that too. And
then you have a $500 deductible. You've got a $1,000 deductible if you're a married couple, and you've got a $1,500 deductible if you've got a family. And it doesn't matter how many.
Well, you
even
have to
the
have
Runnels,
a responsible lifestyle, though.
Paige and Kelly Runnels could get off us a lot better because they've got 600 children and they would have a $1,500 deductible.
Yeah, but see, that's the problem. Obamacare
is Paige pregnant again?
No, she's not.
Are you sure?
I'm positive.
Do you know, Donna Fiducia, do you know that when I Love Lucy was on TV, that when Lucille Ball was pregnant, there was big controversy over saying the word pregnant
and the
on
fact
the show.
They had to say
expecting.
And they stayed in separate beds. They were husband and wife, but they had single beds.
Well, then it's an immaculate conception, I guess.
Well, they couldn't show that. But you were too little to remember that. I'm not.
Well, you were a teenager.
That's true.
And I was not born yet.
Right. Anyhow, getting back to that. But this is what Obamacare is meant to do, folks. And shame on the AARP. Okay? AARP
shame on the AARP.
Is sitting there trying. They got billions to push this through on their unsuspecting people who are members, and you really need to join AMAC, which Mark Levin does talk about a lot. The American Society of Mature American Citizens, or whatever it is.
Something like that.
But they're running specials now, actually, and it's much better than AARP, and it keeps the American lifestyle and the conservative lifestyle in mind.
Well, and Donna knows about this firsthand because she gets all of that senior citizen mail.
You get it now, too.
I do?
Yes, you do. I just throw it out. AARP says,
hey, when we went to see the Sam Sorbo show, they gave us senior citizen discounts.
We went to go
How about that?
The Sean Hannity produced movie, Let There Be Light, starring our friend Sam Sorbo and her hubby.
And if you haven't gone to that movie
it's
yet,
a great movie. It really
shame
is.
on you.
Great
Big time.
Christmas movie, great holiday movie. But yeah, they don't even ask anymore. They just give us a senior citizens discount. What's the deal with that?
Probably the gray in my beard.
Yeah, and the gray in my hair, but that's another story. The fact that I'm not made up by the Fox News Channel makeup artist anymore.
I want to bring in our dear friend Conor O'Brien from Bostonia.
Well, I just wanted to say one other thing.
The nice Jewish boy from Brooklyn.
But there's Russian collusion is in the story.
Fast.
Can I just get to this real
fast?
Quick? There's Russian collusion. Russian collusion. It's finally here. Russian collusion. There's a Russian oligarch that's docked his yacht, which is the world's largest yacht, just down from Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida.
That means that there's collusion.
There's
it also means
collusion.
that communism is a beautiful thing, ladies and gentlemen, because if you're a communist, if you are from a communist country, just ask all the Cubans and the Chinese and the North Koreans and the Russians, you too can own a 500-foot yacht if you work hard enough and believe in yourself.
Let's go for about $1 million a foot because it's worth 500 million. The guy who owns this yacht, his name is Roman Abramovich. He owns apparently London's Chelsea Football Club, and he's the largest shareholder of Russia's second largest steel company. It has a pool, it has a helipad, it has a submarine, it has a crew of 92. I guess a helicopter comes on that helipad. But here's the collusion part. First daughter Ivanka Trump and her hubby Jared Kushner have met with this guy Abramovich. They've been friends for a long time. But Kushner did disclose that in his security clearance paperwork, so maybe we don't have something here. Anyhow, I was looking for that. We gotta find collusion. We gotta find collusion. We gotta find collusion. And there it might be. All right. Let's talk Boston.
Let's talk Boston.
Talk Boston.
Yeah.
Connor, how you doing? Connor, you're driver for Stock Coaches, huh?
Yeah, Stock Coaches out of Atlanta. That's it.
Do the people in Boston ever pronounce the word R or the letter R?
Yeah. There's a weird thing between Boston and Rhode Island, I think, where if a word ends in a vowel, they kind of add an R to it.
Oh, is that the deal?
Like ideas. That's a great idea.
Soda?
Yeah.
Soder. That's true. Actually, Tina says Soder, too, and she's from New Jersey. My friend Tina, so isn't that funny? All right, so talk a little bit, because even though I grew up in New Jersey, I worked, of course, in New York City for 30-some-odd years. I hate the Yankees. So I'm a Red Sox fan. So there's hope for me yet, right?
Yeah, you're on the right team.
I am on the right team. Okay. But we love Manny. We love Manny. We went to see Manny when he was toward the end of his career when he was playing down here in Atlanta. And what is with, he's like got ADD. He's out there like rocking back and forth in the outfield. He's just,
Yeah, there's the best thing to do is go on YouTube or whatever and just look up Manny being Manny.
oh, really? That's what it is?
Yeah.
Manny being Manny.
Yeah, and it's just hours of that. Him in the dugout, him on the outfield.
He is. It's
classic.
hilarious. Manny Ramirez. I miss him so much. And of course, Big Papi. And of course, what did they get rid? They had to get rid of what's his face, even though he spoke the truth from ESPN after winning. Schilling, Kurt Schilling. I mean, come on, give me a break here. But let's talk corruption here. Let's talk the Big Dig. Yeah. I mean, seriously, if people don't know what the Big Dig is, if you've ever been to Boston, it's perennially under construction until the last couple of years, thanks to Ted Kennedy.
Yeah, I'm not getting that AARP mail yet. I'm in my early 30s, but my whole life growing up, it was just like, this is how it is. It's driving from north of Boston to south of Boston to see my family would be like just surrounded by traffic. You'd take I-93, which goes right through Boston. It would just detour you onto like side streets and stuff. You're on regular service roads.
But it was basically a way for Ted Kennedy to pay off the unions.
It was. Yeah.
It started in like a few million, and it ended up being like billions of dollars.
Yeah.
Where they reworked the whole area of Boston.
Yeah.
I must admit, the North End does have pretty good Italian food. Not as good as mine, but it's pretty damn close. Pretty good in the North End. And the cannolis. I missed the cannoli. The cannolis.
You know, I forgot to tell you this. Sean, another driver I work with, had his first cannoli the other day.
He never had a cannoli? How
he didn't
old
even
is
know
he?
what it was. And Zaza was from New York, and she was honestly a little offended.
These driver talk.
Yeah.
Driver talk here at Star Coaches. Yeah. So, how old is he that he had his first cannoli? How could he not?
36, 37,
Oh,
I think.
my gosh. What is he missing? He has no idea what he's missing. He didn't know who Charles Manson was. There's one guy who should have died years ago. I can't believe he lived into his 90s. But at least he's gone.
You talk Jersey and
well, they just talk, you know, I don't like the Yankees. You know, I don't like the Yankees.
Can we cuss on here?
No, you can't cuss.
We don't like the Yankees.
No, you can't say the 7 dirty words.
Yeah.
George Carlin would not be happy.
Yeah.
Okay, so talk a little Boston, you know?
Well, I don't know what to say. It kind of, being down here in Georgia with you guys is rubbing off on me a little bit.
You're in a bus. You're not rubbing off on anything. You got to, give me a little bit of the lingo there. Park the car in Harvard Yard?
Yeah, well, I drive a truck, so I park my truck.
Truck. It's like a chuck.
May or may not be pulling a trailer.
Trailer.
Yeah.
TR is a CH? Trailer?
Yeah.
Is that how you work it?
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
It just rolls off the tongue. We talk more efficiently.
Well, we're getting into the holidays, and I think you guys should know one thing, though. As you travel around New York...
Where do people go to college up there?
Harvard. Yeah.
Harvard.
Where do they park?
In Harvard Yard.
Well, that's true. What
do they do with their car when they're there?
They park it.
They park it.
They park their car.
Where?
In Harvard Yard.
When I worked with Howard Stern, that was the funniest thing, because his first wife, was from Boston.
Oh, yeah.
And he'd talk about how the in-laws were coming for the holidays all the time, and he couldn't stand listening to him talk. It drove him nuts. And Howard.
I've never been to Cheers.
Yeah, it's true. And he all he'd talk about, and it was really pretty funny. He'd say, Howard, park the car in Harvard. Yeah, oh my God. I don't know how he could listen to it. I just want you to know, when you come from Boston down to New York, if you want your kid to see Santa at Macy's Flagship store right here in New York City, you have to book it online. I just thought you should know that. You have to book it online.
You're out of time.
I'm out of time, but this is like the latest thing. To book your kid online to go see Santa at Macy's Flagship store? God, I couldn't believe that. What else is
All right, who we
this
got
world
coming up?
coming
Donna
to?
Fiducia.
We have STACIE RUMENAP coming up from Stop Child Predators. Then we'll be talking to Michael Cutler on immigration and Richard Manning, president of Americans for Limited Government. God, do we need that? It's coming up next on Cowboy Logic Radio.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. Their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire, exchange a piercing glaze. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't think.
Check us out on the web at cowboylogic.us.
Hi, this is Michelle Malkin from CRTV.com, and you're listening to Talk America Radio.
Accuracy and range are a necessity. Now comfort is an option as well. Nemo Arms introduces the Omen 300 Win Mag. The Omen 300 is perfectly balanced for reduced recoil, creating sub-minute of angle accuracy. And fit for the tightest of tolerances. The Omen is offered in carbine or full-length models with a 10 or 14-round magazine. American-made, owned, and designed, Nemo Arms is setting a new standard in modern sporting rifles. Find out more at nemoarms.com.
Hi, this is Dr. Kelly Ward from the great state of Arizona, and you're listening to Talk America Radio, the new dominant force in conservative talk radio.
I lost my brother Frank in the Battle of Iwo Jima.
He served on 4 combat tours in Vietnam, in Iraq, Afghanistan. There's a life that was lost behind that pin.
I put it on for my wife,
For my husband, my brother,
my dad.
my son.
We wear it because we honor those that we lost.
To learn more about the stories behind the Gold Star Pins, visit goldstarpins.org.
This is Lieutenant Colonel Bill Cowan, Vietnam vet and Fox News contributor, and you're listening to Talk America Radio at talkamericaradio.us.
You're listening to your local news source, WLBB, News Talk 1330 and FM 106.3.
Hey, everybody, they're back on again.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. When their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glaze. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance.
Welcome back to Cowboy Logic Radio. I'm Donna Fiducia, along with Don Neuen. Are you going to behave?
Yeah, I'm behaving.
Wow, I'm surprised.
Or, no, you should be impressed.
I guess I'm impressed, too, because he's trying to be nice, because our next guest is one STACIE RUMENAP. She is the president of Stop Child Predators, and you can find all their great work at
That's
Stop Child.
why I'm behaving.
Exactly. I understand.
There's a time and a place for everything, ladies and gentlemen, and I, Don Neuen, have figured that out. Back to you, Donna.
You're so full of it. StopChildPredators.org is the organization. Stacey, welcome back to Cowboy Logic Radio.
Thank you so much for having me.
There's so much to talk about.
Hi, Stacey.
Hi, Don. I'm glad you're behaving.
I'm behaving. I'm acting my age.
Give him about 5 minutes. That's about all it'll last.
Now, let's get into this. I mean, this is a very serious topic that we're going to broach in what I think is our second interview with you.
Yeah. See, and I must have led a sheltered life, because I wouldn't even thought about sexually molesting a child. And
I hope not.
But no, what I'm saying is it's not something when I was growing up that I even, gave an iota of a thought about. I guess I did lead a sheltered life. In hindsight, during my career, I had doors open in many areas, and if you don't go through them, nothing happens. So that's pretty much the case. But that's very much not the case in this country now and around the world. I mean, you see it when radical Islam raises its ugly head. You see the hashtag Save Our Girls, and those poor kids with Boko Haram were really never found. And now you have STACIE RUMENAP, the hashtag Me Too campaign. Is that helping or really hurting?
So I think it's helping for victims of sexual assault. We have to remember, though, when the Me Too movement started, it started with sexual harassment in the workplace. Now it's being being attributed to sexual harassment in Hollywood, sexual harassment in politics, things that have been going on for decades, but now women are coming forward to say, hey, this happened to me, it's not okay, and we want to make sure that the harassment extends into children of sexual abuse survivors being able to come forward as well. You know, these are kids who have long struggled to come to terms with their past, to find their voice, to finally have someone believe them, and now they have the opportunity to stand up and speak out. And so it has opened a door for these kids who have struggled with this shame, with this secret for so long. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. You know, we have people talking about Me Too. We see it on Facebook. We see it on Twitter. It's viral. It's in the media. It's in Hollywood. It's in politics. It's in business. But now what are we going to do about it? It's great for awareness. It's great to give victims a voice to be able to come forward and feel like they are empowered to do so. But now what? What do we do with this information, and how does that change how women are treated in the workforce?
Isn't it amazing that the legislative branch of our federal government, the guys and gals that theoretically would be passing or creating laws to help squelch or reduce or eliminate this very topic, are using taxpayer dollars to pay off victims, as well as having non-disclosure agreements signed on both sides so that we, the taxpayer, can't find out who was either the recipient of those funds, but most importantly, who committed the crime.
That's absolutely right. And how pathetic that our lawmakers, one, feel that they need to institute sexual harassment training for members of Congress and for their staffs. We elect people to come to office to represent our constituents, to represent our ideas, our values. Whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, we think we're electing really good people to office, and most of them are. But unfortunately, you know, what's the quote about power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely?
Absolutely, yep.
You know, and that's what we're seeing. These men and women get into office. They have no accountability. They have forgotten why they were elected. They've forgotten what they're supposed to be doing. And instead, they're running wild parties and doing whatever they want. And they think they can get away with it because they have gotten away with it for so long.
Exactly.
We talk about transparency in tax reform. We talk about transparency in healthcare. But where is transparency when it comes to people's behaviors as human beings on Capitol Hill?
Especially from the people who make the laws we have to abide by. You know, I'm old enough to remember when there were congressional pages, and that organization, that group of people were up and coming kids going to law school or whatever, and they were basically unpaid volunteers that would work at these various congressional offices, both senators and congressmen. And when I first started at Fox, I met Dick Morris, and I told him, you know, my son wanted to be a lawyer. My son back then was only, 16 years old, but he wanted to be a lawyer. And Dick's going, oh, I can help him become a page. And I'm thinking to myself, no, I don't want her to become a page.
All the pages are bent over in Congress.
Yeah, exactly. And all of a sudden, a few years later, they stopped that program. This has been going on for a long time. And now that the lights are coming on, the cockroaches are scattering.
Well, that's absolutely right. You know, when I worked on Capitol Hill in the mid-1990s, we still had pages then. And that was when the program was just starting to come to an end because the light was being shed on the abuse of these kids. You know, these are high school kids, and they're coming up to Washington, D.C. They think to get a lesson in how our government works, and they are getting that lesson, but they're seeing all the bad aspects of how government works. And it really is such a shame. As a mother now, I would never send one of my kids to those programs. They don't exist, which is probably for the best. But if they did at this point in time, there is absolutely no way I would send my kids up at that young age to work on Capitol Hill. And it's a real shame because you really have this great opportunity for young kids to see what politics is like, how our laws are really made. You can study politics in a book, you can get degrees in it, but until you're actually practicing, it's like most things. Until you have a chance to actually practice that trade, you really don't understand how it works. And it's such a shame that our lawmakers can't be trusted to run programs like that the intent behind those programs are so good, but that we can't trust them to run them. And the people running them, where's the supervision? Where was the supervision? Those pages should have never been allowed to be out drinking, to be out working all hours, to be having relationships with adults who were staff members and members of Congress. I mean, it really, our political system has just become appalling.
I wouldn't even want to send my kids, if I had them at elementary or middle school or high school age levels, I wouldn't even want to send them on a field trip to Washington, D.C.
Unless you were one of the chaperones, quite frankly. That's the only way I'd send
But
my kids.
I can't even carry in the District of Columbia.
That's true. That is scary. We're talking to Stacey.
I wouldn't be there.
Yeah, we're talking to Stacie RUMENAP. She is the president of Stop Child Predators at stopchildpredators.org. Stacey, when last we spoke, you were saying it's a huge problem domestically, and it's mostly girls, but boys too. 1 in 3 girls, 1 in 7 boys. Stepfathers are a huge problem. 800,000 people are in the National Registry of Sex Offenders. And the problems, although kids are resilient, you had told us in the past, but they still have problems most of their life. Depression, suicide, bedwetting. I mean, this is, no one talks about...
I would think drug use.
I'm sure. And that comes with the depression and the suicide. No one talks about how these children are affected for the rest of their lives.
Well, that's very true. And that is why we have partnered with parents like Mark Lunsford to pass Jessica's Law in his daughter's memory, Brent King to pass Chelsea's Law in his daughter's memory, Jenna Quinn out of Texas. We're working with her right now to focus on education and getting teachers and professional staff in schools trained on prevention and detection of abuse to try and save kids. These kids' lives, it's very easy when we're talking about the criminal justice system to focus on the criminal and to focus on the punishment and to focus on what happens to that family. And those are all important questions to ask, and we have to make sure that we are treating people fairly. But what we forget so often is that there is a real victim involved in these types of crimes. And when we are talking about child abduction and abuse and sexual exploitation, trafficking, these kids' lives, whether they survive or they are found dead, these kids' lives are ruined. And sometimes Mark Lunsford used to say to me a lot of times, who has it worse, the child that survives or the child that dies? And of course, we want our children to live. We want to be able to get them counseling. We want to be able to get them help. But these kids who survive this abuse, who are survivors, and let me tell you, they really are survivors. They have a tough road ahead. Their lives are changed forever. Mm-hmm. The innocence of their childhood has been stolen from them, and they have to rebuild their lives every single day. It affects how they relate to adults when they are an adult, to relationships, to having their own children, to the types of work that they do. You're absolutely right that when we look at these kids and the effects that the abuse has on them, suicide and drug use and depression, I mean, all of that is very, very real. And it's why we want to be part of the solution.
Exactly. One of the most, if you want to call it a success story, was that of Elizabeth Smart. In fact, she has a special on A&E that's running right now. So few really get rescued, and she's got the gumption enough to come forward and talk about it and talk about where she is now in life. And that's a wonderful thing. But if you can, Stacie RUMENAP, talk a little bit about the public education system, which I think is really a huge problem. Don's son came home as a young teenager years ago. 6th grade. Talking about stuff that you wouldn't even see in the movie Deliverance.
We're not going to mention it, ladies and gentlemen, but my youngest son, when he was in the 6th grade, he was at a middle school at the time. We were all sitting at a dinner table, and he brought up a term that describes an absolute vile and disgusting act, and it was jaw-dropping for me to hear that. And I immediately interrupted him, and I said, "Where did you hear that term?" And he goes, "I heard it in health class."
Health class? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, we have a real problem when it comes to our public schools and a lack of proper training. I think a lot of times the schools are trying to take the place of conversations that parents should be having with their children when they feel it's appropriate, using terms that they feel comfortable with. But unfortunately, schools sort of feel this mandate to teach all kids all things at younger and younger ages. And of course, there is an opportunity to talk about body safety to children, which is very, very different than talking about sex education to children. I think when you're talking about keeping kids safe, when you're talking about keeping them free from sexual abuse, those conversations have to happen very early, but they should be happening by parents. They should be happening in the home so that kids understand and can ask questions freely, with parents being able to answer questions that they think are appropriate in ways that they feel are appropriate.
I agree.
But look what's happened. Our schools are teaching sex ed without any indication or inclusion of parents at very early ages.
Or what's right and wrong. That's the thing.
What's right and what's wrong.
They seem to think anything goes. It's like the hippies of the 60s.
Well, and
now
this
are running
particular discussion that we were having with my youngest son had to do with a sexual act that, quite frankly, in my opinion, is really perverted.
Way over the top. You're talking way over the top.
You have Teen Vogue magazine telling young girls it's okay to have anal sex, and somehow in society we say, well, that's okay because we don't want to offend anyone. That is not okay to be teaching our young teenagers that that's what they should be doing. They shouldn't be having any form of sex at that age. Allow them to make some decisions when they are adults. There's this big difference of being able to use technology, for instance, safely, and being able to say yes to technology, but doing so safely. But yet you have kids younger and younger. Now the average age of a child using a smartphone is about 10 years old, sometimes even younger, but on average about 10 years old. And parents are handing these devices to their kids without any education, without any understanding necessarily of what they can do with that phone, what they can access, the types of sites they can access, the types of messages that 10-year-olds are sending to one another when they're at school. And administrators are just as blind to it as parents a lot of times. And you have these cases of sexting and cyberbullying that's happening at younger and younger ages, all because we don't get back to teaching our kids about safety, what's right and wrong. And it's okay for different families to have different conversations. And what is right for my family might be different from your family. But these are the conversations we should be having with our children in our homes and not leaving it to our public schools.
It starts with responsibility. And then
it starts with parenting. A lot of times these smartphones are given to 10-year-old kids and 11-year-old kids, and then, as you just said, maybe even younger, to replace the role of a parent. They give them this smartphone as either an appeasement or here's a babysitter that cost me $40 a month.
That's absolutely right. And, there's so many things that parents and teachers can do to make sure when they hand a kid a smartphone that they do so safely. You can monitor, first of all, very easily, but you can also, you can put safeguards onto the phone that restrict certain websites or certain content or limitations on how long they can watch videos. We also recommend to parents, it's okay to let your kid learn on the computer. It's okay to let them listen to music and watch videos, but be active, be proactive with what they are watching. Just like you wouldn't allow your kid to go to a neighbor's house that you knew nothing about that neighbor, you shouldn't allow them to be talking to someone online that you don't know or that they don't know. And you shouldn't you shouldn't want to allow them to watch videos and content that you have no idea what it's about. We know kids fall to peer pressure. We know they learn things from their friends who have older brothers and older sisters, and that's something that kids have been doing long before any of us were parents, and they're going to continue to do that. But that's why it's so important to have conversations with your kids and know what they're doing. One thing that Jenna Quinn is doing, and we have partnered with her, is going into schools, both private and public, and getting training for teachers on prevention and detection of abuse. Because we know that kids do come to school who have been abused at home, and they don't feel like they have a trusted adult that they can talk to, whether it's something that's happened to them online by maybe one of their friends or something that's happening in the real world. They don't always have an adult that they can go to. And so we want to make sure teachers are being trained properly and know how to prevent and be part of the solution.
I think a lot of the problem, though, is also we have such a litigious society. A teacher might see something and be afraid to say something because they're going to get sued, and it happens in so many areas of life now.
That's absolutely true. And you mentioned Elizabeth Smart's case, and of course that particular case captured the hearts of the world, really, because it was such an unusual case. It was that stranger abduction, someone who came into her home in the middle of the night, abducted her in the middle of the night, threatened her, told her if she screamed or said a word that he would kill her sister who was lying in the bedroom with her. And so Elizabeth went with her abductor somewhat willingly in an effort to protect her sister and her other siblings and her parents. She believed her abuser over months and months that he would kill her, that he would go back to the house and he would kill her family if she tried to escape and tried to run away. Ultimately, she was saved, which was amazing. She's telling her story for awareness and education, which is just incredible. That helps her in her healing process as well. But those cases like Elizabeth are so rare. Typically, the child who is being molested, sexually assaulted, degraded in any way, it's happening by someone the child knows. It's happening by a parent, a step-parent, a teacher, a coach. You look at Hollywood, it's these directors and producers and writers who had access to children who, even the parents of these young kids, thought it was okay. They thought they knew that person. They thought it was okay for their kid to go to dinner with that person. These are the types of people that we need to be the most cautious of. It's good that we have the sex offender registry so that we can know who in our neighborhood we may need to watch out for to keep our family safe. But almost more scary is the person we don't know who's not on that registry.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about, if you would, the Lolita Express in Orgy Island, Jeffrey Epstein. Apparently, many people are finally coming forward. I guess now that the Clintons are being exposed, for lack of a better way of saying it, in so many areas, more and more people are trying to come forward, like Donna Brazil did.
Being exposed as opposed to exposing themselves?
Yeah, well,
is that what you're getting at there?
Words.
Okay.
But, And the Haitian Relief Fund, we've had Charles Ortel on. He's doing a lot of yeoman's work looking into the Clinton Foundation. And a lot of these, the relief organizations that the Clintons did, especially with Haiti, never went to help Haiti, but there was human trafficking going on in so many of these areas. And this Lolita Express, I mean, it's unbelievable if this is found to be true.
No, you're absolutely right. For too long, I think that liberals really turned a blind eye to anything, any type of accusation against Bill Clinton, whether it was a sexual abuse claim, whether it was pornography, whether it was fundraising for illegitimate reasons. We're starting to see that the Democratic Party is being forced to respond to allegations of sexual misconduct and abuse of power made against former President Bill Clinton. But for too long, the media, Hollywood, and liberal politicians turned a blind eye. It's hypocritical to ask Roy Moore to step down, and I'm not saying he's a good guy. He will have his day in court, and that case, in many cases, will have to come forward. But they're asking Roy Moore to step down when they have no evidence. Yet you have someone like Bill Clinton who is actually impeached. You have all these threats and accusations against the foundation that has since been closing its relief efforts because it is so caught up in such scandal, and yet somehow it took allegations against Kevin Spacey and Harvey Weinstein and Louis C.K. and fellow Democrats to come out before anyone is even willing to look at the Clintons.
Well, and they're still not. Let me ask you this. Who do you feel is more evil, the abuser or the enabler of the abuser? And clearly everybody can read between the lines. Right now we're talking about Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton.
That's right. And I believe, I still say the abuser is the most guilty. But absolutely you are right in suggesting that the enabler has a very large impact and effect and should be held accountable. When you look at the Penn State scandal, Joe Paterno's wife, people really looked into her. Jerry Sandusky's wife, people really looked in to find out, what did the wives know? Were they a part of this? Why didn't they come forward? Yet again, it seems like with the Clintons, nothing sticks to them. Hillary Clinton, decades of scandal against her husband. Clearly, they have some sort of political compact and deal that she will stand. She claimed back in the 90s, I'm not standing by my man. Yet, absolutely, she is doing that for her own political power.
Yeah,
absolutely. And it's absolutely disgusting to see what they have done, and that there's a good chance she's going to be a candidate for president once again.
Yeah, that really is scary.
Well, standing by her man would obviously require the question, define the word man.
Well, that's absolutely right.
The problem
that took Donna a minute to get.
I had to think about that. The problem, though, really is abortion, and that's the bottom line. The Democrats want abortion to be legal no matter what. Not that it's ever going to be in question anymore, but that really was the big reason why they stood behind Bill Clinton. And you mentioned Louis C.K. and Kevin Spacey and Harvey Weinstein. Now we have pictures with Al Franken, but, he doesn't necessarily have to step aside, and that was before he was a senator. The double standard is just mind-boggling. And Stacey Rumenap, we started this by talking about the hashtag #MeToo for people who were victims of sexual abuse. Remember, Monica Lewinsky even texted that or tweeted that, hashtag #MeToo, and they came out and started criticizing her for that as well. I mean, this is
before we go to break, though, and Stacey, we got to go to break real soon here. Please tell the listeners how they can follow your great work, how they can contact you if they need to, and how they can help.
Oh, please. Well, visit us on our website at stopchildpredators.org. My email is on there. Our phone number is on there. You can follow us on Twitter. We are at Stop Predators on Twitter, and we're on Facebook also under Stop Child Predators. You can always reach out, just info@stopchildpredators.org. If you want to shoot me an email, that'll come directly to me. My name is long and hard to spell, so if you just use the info@stopchildpredators.org, you can always reach me. We would love for people to be a part of what we are trying to do. We are really trying to change people's lives. When we first started the organization, we naively thought we would pass Jessica's Law, which deals with mandatory prison sentences for adults who prey on young children. We thought we would be able to pass that law in all 50 states, and we would close our organization. We'd be able to call that success. But what we have found since 2005 when we formed is that it's so much more than just about prison terms. And we are working with more victims to come forward to tell their stories. We are working with lawmakers to continue to pass tough penalties for adult sex offenders who prey on children. And we really want to help the victims feel empowered to be able to come forward.
You're doing awesome work.
Absolutely. Stacey Rumenap, StopChildPredators.org. In light of what's happened in Hollywood and D.C. and things that are coming to light so fast and furious now, hopefully this will make your job come to light a lot better in the great work your organization does. Stacey Rumenap, StopChildPredators.org. Thanks so much for joining us here on Cowboy Logic Radio.
Thanks so much for having me.
And coming up, we'll be talking to Michael Cutler on immigration and Richard Manning, president of Americans for Limited Government. It's all coming up next on Cowboy Logic Radio.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. Their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glance. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance. When cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. When their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire
out on the web at cowboylogic.us.
Hello, everyone. I'm Donna Fiducia.
And I'm Don Neuen, and this is Cowboy Logic Radio.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. When their hearts were filled with memories, bodies filled with hurt, they would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glares. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance.
Welcome back to Cowboy Logic Radio.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Let me be the first to welcome you back to this second and riveting hour of Cowboy Logic Radio. We have got one of our favorite guests that are joining us. Donna, would you like to introduce this stellar individual that we call not only our friend, but our colleague?
Yes, because he also has a show on our network, talkamericaradio.us. That would be one Michael Cutler and the Michael Cutler Hour. That makes sense because that's his name.
Which that, too, is a riveting hour.
Yes, it is, because not too many people know any more than Michael Cutler about drug enforcement and all kinds of immigration stuff. Because
nobody knows more.
That's true. He has a 30-year distinguished career with the Drug Enforcement Task Force.
Go-to guy.
Yes. He wrote for Laura Ingram's Life Zet. He's testified before Congress and the 9/11 Commission. Californians for Population Stabilization. That's an oxymoron. You can find him at frontpagemag.com, thesocialcontract.com, and, of course, his website, michaelcutler.net.
And he's a lifelong Democrat and one of my best friends.
Yeah, that's saying something because you know why? He has common sense. That's
well,
what
he
it
speaks
is.
the gospel.
Well, most leftists...
Even as a Jewish guy, he speaks the gospel.
Well, didn't the original Jewish guy speak the gospel?
Hey, Michael Cutler, let's cut to the chase, man. Welcome back to Cowboy Logic Radio. You are absolutely, in our opinion, one stellar human being, along with being the authority on anything immigration. And that's why we want to have you back today, of course.
Yes.
Well, it's always a privilege and a pleasure to join you. I so appreciate the work that you do, providing the information that the mainstream media either lies about or won't talk about. They say that if the tree falls in the forest and no one is there to hear it, does it make a sound? The better question is, if no one reports on it, does anybody know it fell?
And I think the better question is, does the bear, you know what in the woods? I almost said it.
The irrepressible Donna, yes.
That's right.
Michael, tell us what the latest is. I mean, I could call you 2 days from now, and things are going to be completely different. Now, obviously, D.C. and the swamp is focused on tax reform. Is anything happening as far as immigration?
Well, Tom Homan has been nominated to be the permanent director of ICE. He's been acting almost ever since the inception of the Trump administration. I hope Tom is confirmed by the Senate. From everything I know, I don't know him personally, but from the people that I do know who are still back at DHS, he's a real good guy. And unlike most of our directors from the past, or just about all of them, this guy was an agent for his entire career. So he understands the job from soup to nuts. He's dedicated to the mission. So I'm very optimistic about him. The problem that I worry about, though, is that you still have swamp dwellers who were put in key positions at DHS by the prior administration or administrations, because let's face it, George W. Bush was no hero either on the immigration issue or other issues.
Nope. That's why they lost me in 2003.
That have done this.
Yep.
Both political parties have done this to us. Carter started the Orwellian newspeak, and in fact, I wrote about Orwell and freedom of speech and tyranny in my latest article for the Social Contract. The title, Language Wars, The Road to Tyranny is Paved with Language Censorship. So Carter started the nonsense of eliminating the word immigration from the vernacular, alien from the vernacular, saying that any foreigner here is an immigrant, so if, God forbid, you suggest we keep out terrorists or criminals or people who would replace American workers, you're anti-immigrant when, in fact, you're pro-enforcement. That's created a very toxic environment. President Reagan gave us the first amnesty. He didn't hire more ICE agents and even included a confidentiality provision so that immigration agents could not share amnesty files with other law enforcement agencies under penalty of 5 years in jail. Think about that. We had George W. Bush create DHS in a way that made it impossible to secure the borders or enforce the immigration laws. That's not my opinion, by the way. That was the opinion articulated by John Hostetler about 3 years after 9/11, and he was the chairman of the House Immigration Subcommittee. I was at that hearing as a witness, and Hostetler was a Republican. And of course, what Obama did to this country, I could probably spend the next week venting. And if you look at all the headlines about MS-13, the unaccompanied minors brought with it incredible numbers of violent, pernicious members of MS-13. The body count here on Long Island is staggering. Within the last 2 years, at least 20 kids killed. And you know, guys, I started investigating MS-13 25 years ago. And back then, it was truly on the verge of insignificance. It was emerging as a threat, but it was only emerging.
But it was manageable back then.
That bomb was the Obama administration. So, you know, when I look at issue after issue, and it impacts everything, doesn't it? It impacts our economy, national security, public safety. You look at the opioid crisis. And what's remarkable is the advent of sanctuary cities and sanctuary states, which is Orwellian. They're not sanctuaries. You know, at the risk of sounding like George Carlin, a sanctuary is a place of tweeting birds and babbling brooks and blue skies. These are magnet cities for dangerous individuals from other countries.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, and if you look at the drug trade, and I have an article coming out at Front Page Mag, and here's something for you to think about. I don't know if you're aware of it, but in August, the Drug Task Force, and I spent half my 30-year career with the Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force, and I was also the first INS agent assigned to the Unified Intelligence Division of DEA in New York City. The task force arrested a Mexican couple in Kew Gardens, Queens, a beautiful neighborhood in New York City. They took out of their apartment hundreds of pounds of narcotics, including 140 pounds of fentanyl. Now, here's the staggering thing to think about. According to DEA, guess how many lethal doses could be created with 140 pounds of fentanyl? What do you think the number is?
It's staggering. I know that it is. I don't know the amount. But before you answer your own question there, Mike, in my industry, which is the rock and roll and the entertainer tour coach industry, where we carry all these bands around, there was a young man that died this past week.
21 years old.
Oh, wow.
He was a rapper. And that was, if I'm not mistaken, the cause of his death. I wanted to ask you about that. So answer your own question and then explain to the listener how absolutely wickedly lethal this drug is and the impact it's having on the community, as well as police officers having to protect themselves against this stuff.
Yeah, it's a devastating drug. It is estimated to be 50 times, 50 times more potent than heroin. 140 pounds of fentanyl can create, when I read the number, I had to read it 4 times because it just staggered my mind, 32 million lethal doses. 32 million lethal doses.
And that's out of 140 pounds?
Yes.
So something the size of a small man.
The thing is, explain. I know nothing about fentanyl. I know nothing about drugs in general. I hate to say it, but how is it made? And from what I gather, you can't even touch it, or else you could, because it's absorbed through the skin.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it is lethal beyond mind, but it's mind-boggling. You know, we worry about dirty bombs. This is the dirty bomb, if you want to think about it that way. It's made by concocting a mixture of drugs that are available, and there's a chemical process. If you're a chemist, you can do it. But because it's easier to operate outside the United States, the Mexican cartels have been manufacturing fentanyl and smuggling it into the United States, and point to the fact this Mexican couple. And so they apparently smuggled it in across the Mexican border, brought it to New York City. So this raises a bunch of issues. Now, I served my entire 30-year career in New York City. And if you went to an area of Queens, New York, along Roosevelt Avenue, an area called Jackson Heights, it used to be controlled by the Colombian drug cartels. Mm-hmm. Today, it's controlled by the Mexicans because the Colombian cartels have decided that and this is why we always need to be up on what we're doing, and we need to understand that there's no magic bullet solution. You know, when I did one of my very first congressional hearings, I said that the immigration system was kind of like a balloon. If you squeeze one end, it's going to pop out somewhere else. The majority of Colombian drugs, going back 30 years ago, was coming across our border in Florida. If you remember the TV series Miami Vice, they were using speedboats.
I lived in Miami in the mid-'80s. I saw it firsthand.
I learned about drugs by watching that show. I'm telling you. It was unbelievable. You think this is happening, and you never realize it.
Well, that's right. So what was happening is they were using speedboats and running that stuff in. And by the way, every state is a border state. When I began my career with the INS in 1971, I was an inspector at Kennedy Airport. We had heroin swallowers back then. They would stuff balloons or condoms with heroin, with cocaine, with whatever drug, swallow them, and on occasion those balloons, whatever, would rupture, and you'd have a dead body be taken off an airplane. So this has been going on forever. But we had these speedboats coming into Florida, and under the Vice President Bush back then, they used the Navy and the Coast Guard to interdict the boats. Over time, the Colombians realized they were losing a lot of their product, so they shifted from Florida to the Mexican border. And that's when everything shifted. And then we started to go after the cartels in Colombia. So they decided, why are we smuggling it in? Let's let the Mexicans do it. They are then exposed to the possibility of, prosecution, arrest, and so forth. We lose some of our profits, but we gain insulation. And that was how we gave rise to the Mexican drug cartels. So it was as though a light switch got flipped in Jackson Heights. All the Colombian places suddenly became Mexican places. The players on the street went from Colombian to Mexican. And so we saw that shift. And if you go through Jackson Heights, when I travel around the country, I do speaking engagements. I was just honored by the folks at Grand Lake, Colorado. I was the keynote speaker for Constitution Week. They had a parade. I was at a parade. I got to send you guys the photos. Greatly honored to do it. But wherever you go, you hear the same thing from police, concerns about gangs, drugs, and so forth. Not Grand Lakes. They truly live in a paradise. But I've been all over this country, and I've done ride-alongs with sheriffs and police officers, and they'll show you 3 or 4 money wire places and say, look at this. These are where the money is going. If you drive down Roosevelt Avenue, you have 3 or 4 money wire services on every block on each side of the street. In some areas, you might have 5, 6, or 8 money wire places, Western Union and others, that can wire the money anywhere in the world. And to show you the magnitude of the problem we face in New York, those operations are 24/7. You drive through there.
Trump want to put a curtailment on the amount that can go out? Aren't there some restrictions he's trying to put on?
Yes, he did. And, Tom Tancredo, and I testified for Tom when he was the chairman of the House Immigration Reform Caucus, tried to tax the money. And immediately, First Data Corporation, parent company in those days to Western Union, moved their headquarters from Atlanta to Colorado, where Tancredo was from, to create a political action committee to oppose Tancredo, because the money wire services, Western Union, the banks, the remitters, this is their lifeblood. They make billions and billions of dollars every year moving money.
Yep.
And so understand something. Banks and these wire services are like a moving company. If you were going to move from where you are to California, let's say, or Utah, or Omaha, they don't care where you're going. All they want to know, how many pieces of furniture do you have? Is there an elevator? And so forth. And they don't care if it's French provincial or Scandinavian or colonial furniture. They just care how many pieces of furniture. Well, the money remitters are the same way. They don't care how the money was earned. They don't care if a surgeon came to America and saved a baby's life, or if a prostitute working in a brothel mailed money or wired money back home, or it was the consummation of a drug deal. Money is money, and when they move it, they get a piece of the action. And they are very careful to protect their turf. So the idea that the residue from the drug transactions are 2 things: dead bodies and money. And so this is a deadly trade, and you drive through Roosevelt Avenue at 3 in the morning, and I did this for a documentary crew team, and they were in shock. At 3 in the morning, it could have been 3 in the afternoon. Pedestrian traffic, long lines of people inside these establishments. Believe me, there aren't that many people waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning and saying, gee whiz, I just remembered I have to deposit my paycheck.
No, the city never sleeps for a lot of host
so now here's
reasons.
my question. But here's the question that I raised in my latest article that I hope will be out on Monday morning at frontpagemag.com. New York City has the world-renowned police department. It's not even a police department. It's almost a small army, well over 35,000.
I was going to say, there used to be 50,000. I think it's down to like 35,000 now.
Right. Well, it was about, I think, 45,000 at its peak, but you might be right. But it's still a sizable department with the best training, the best resources. I worked very closely with the NYPD for my entire career. So why would you establish New York, as has been reported by DEA, as the hub for drug activity in the northeastern United States when you know that you're dealing with the most sophisticated and well-equipped police department in the country, if not the world?
Why?
And the answer is very simple. New York is a sanctuary city.
Thank you, Mayor de Blasio, who just got reelected by a landslide, virtually unopposed.
Well, by a landslide, but 20% of the people came out to vote, okay?
Yeah. Well, Bo Dietl wasn't going to beat him, unfortunately.
Hey, Mike, let me ask you a question, man. And I ask this of both you and
I hope I'm
Donna.
making sense to you guys, by the way.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Of course, you always make sense. That goes without saying. All right, look, you are a lifelong Democrat. I am a lifelong conservative.
I'm in between.
Donna's kind of in between. She was raised in a Democrat family and figured out what she wanted to do later in life. But my question is this. If the three of us were politicians in Washington, I don't doubt for 1 nanosecond that we'd be doing the right thing, making the right decisions, and would be awfully difficult to corrupt. I'm not saying that they couldn't get us, but I'm saying we sure as hell would be very difficult to corrupt. What is going on with these politicians on either side of the aisle that you and Donna and I, every time we get together, whether it's at a convention someplace or on the air, are talking about the same damn thing over and over and over, and it does, quite frankly, does not look like it could ever get repaired?
Well,
what is the difference?
The problem is bribery, and let me tell you what I mean by bribery. Campaign contributions are bribes. Let's be blunt. Let's not stop screwing around and skittering around the edges of the issue. When I was a federal agent, I wasn't allowed to accept a cup of coffee when I was on duty. Okay, I got an award from the government of Japan. I helped them with the narcotics case. I helped them to capture the final defendant in a case, a young woman that we sent back to Tokyo to stand trial. She was one of 23 defendants. They actually had a proxy ceremony in Tokyo. The DEA legat, the legal attaché, had to stand in for me. He was my proxy, accepted the award, kind of like, I guess, the Academy Awards, accepting the awards for Mr. Cutler is, And they sent the medal back to the United States along with a beautiful certificate that we framed, and it hangs in my house. The medal, on the other hand, was seen as something of value. So my bosses had to make a determination that the materials that it was made out of were not worth more than $35. I kid you not. If they had decided it was worth $40 or whatever, they would have taken it and hung it on the wall at headquarters in Washington, but I could not have kept it because it would have been seen as an illegal gratuity.
Exactly. The same thing in radio. Payola and plugola. We were not allowed to do that, or else we were, fined and thrown in jail. So they make rules that they don't follow. Look at this latest thing, $15 million in a hush fund for people who've been sexually molested by congressmen and senators.
But there's another problem, and here's what no one's talking about. Not only is it taxpayer money, but they don't care because it doesn't hurt them.
Right.
See, if you would say to some of my bosses, I wound up with litigation against a couple of my bosses, and that's a story for another day. But no matter what the settlement is, Donna, it doesn't come out of their pocket, so it doesn't inhibit them.
Same with Obamacare. They're exempt. All Trump has to do is make them non-exempt to let them feel the pinch. They don't feel the heat. They're not going to get out of the kitchen.
Right, and that's the point. See, everyone keeps saying, well, they're spending our money. What's worse than the spending our money is because it's not out of their pockets, they don't care. They aren't paying for it. They're not writing the check. If they had to write the check, a lot of nonsense would stop in a nanosecond, to use your term, Don.
Exactly.
But they don't. So they don't care who writes what check because it's not coming out of their skin.
Mike, we only have a few minutes
left.
Well,
hold on, Donna.
I want to reintroduce him here. Okay?
Everybody knows who Mike Cutler is.
All right, michaelcutler.net.
If you don't, you've had your head in the sand and just too damn bad. Here's the deal. You've got these various committees in Congress, like ethics, and they're laughable, are they not, Mike?
Of course they are, and everything that Congress does is an illusion. I just spoke in front of a bunch of Air Force generals and colonels, and here's what I said. Politicians are like the magician that cuts the woman in half. Now, if the guy really cuts the woman in half, he goes to jail, and maybe he planned to take her to dinner that night, so he's not going to hurt her. Congress goes out and says, we're going to enforce the immigration laws. We're going to secure the borders because they know that's what their constituents want. But guess what? They spend lots of money to make certain that just like the guy that cuts the woman in half, they do nothing to change the flood of cheap labor, foreign students, and foreign tourists entering the United States. It's all kabuki theater, and that's why we're in the situation that we're in today, because they're not determined to do the job, only to create the illusion that they are doing the job. And as a consequence, people are dying. Last year, 60,000 people died of drug overdoses. There's a clear nexus between drugs and violent crime. There's a clear nexus where the money from the drug trade going into the gangs and going into terror organizations are concerned. And you have members of Congress who will not secure that Mexican border, who will not enforce our immigration laws, who will not use the 9/11 Commission report for the starting point on what we're doing. And we just had a terror attack in New York, so they're going to build a wall, and they are building a wall along the bike path where this piece of trash mowed down the bike riders. But God forbid if you talk about securing the Mexican border. And that wall is a joke on the bike path, because all that a terrorist has to do is drive on the sidewalk 2 blocks from that site, and he'd be able to kill even more people.
Exactly.
It's an illusion. It's a game of illusions. These people are magicians, and people are falling for it or have been. But I think finally they woke up, and I think that's why Donald Trump is now in the Oval Office.
I agree with you.
Can continue,
Mike,
with his
I am
agenda,
going to officially give you a new name that I think that you should use, and that you have most definitely earned. Because in my opinion, you are the king of analogies. You are the king of analogies. And so I am going to name you at this point. We got to go very quickly here, Donna, but from this point forth, Michael Cutler is also allowed to use the name Captain Analogy.
Well, you really do put it in very clear
you put it in awesome terms, Mike, and your analogies are phenomenal.
Right.
So, Captain Analogy, you are awesome, sir.
So let me just tell everybody.
Let me wish you and your listeners, by the way, a very happy Thanksgiving. I hope it's a wonderful season for everybody. Stay safe, stay warm, and thank you so much for having me on the program. It's always a joy to be with you guys.
All right,
thanks,
Michael.
Mike. Where can we find him, Donna?
Okay, frontpagemag.com, frontpagemag.com, thesocialcontract.com, and michaelcutler.net. You've seen Michael on all the news programs, recently on One America News Network, which is becoming my favorite network lately, by the way.
Yes.
Front Page
Yes.
Magazine,
Graham
as we
Legend
said.
does a great job.
Yep, and David Horowitz Freedom Center. Michael Cutler, 30 years distinguished career with the Drug Enforcement Task Force. Thanks again for joining us here.
Captain Analogy.
On Cowboy Logic Radio. By the way, folks, also catch the Michael Cutler Hour on TalkAmericaRadio.us. So there you go.
Who do we have coming up, Donna? We got to move here.
We're going to be talking to Richard Manning, President of Americans for Limited Government. That pretty much says it all. It's coming up next on Cowboy Logic Radio.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. Their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire.
Hi, thank you for listening. My name is Ron Phillips, and I'm the owner and operations manager of Talk America Radio. It is with great pride that I offer you these two 24/7 streams of some of the finest talk radio programming in the country, but I need your support. Talk America Radio is a listener-supported network. That means we need your help to continue to offer the quality programming you're hearing right now. Please visit TalkAmericaRadio.us and click the Support Us button. You can contribute monthly or send us a one-time amount. We'll put it to good use continuing to share the American voice. Thank you.
This is Denise Simon, host of the Denise Simon Experience. When I'm not debating with Donna Fiducia about politics, I listen to Cowboy Logic Radio. Why, you ask? Because outside of my blog, founderscode.com, and my own radio show, the Denise Simon Experience, Cowboy Logic is by far the most entertaining and informative radio show on planet Earth. Plus, Don makes me feel guilty if I don't listen to his radio show every week.
Hey folks, this is AJ Gaynor, host of Blow and Smoke on the Talk America Radio Network. We know the mainstream media has a narrative they're pushing. On my show, Blow and Smoke, we challenge that narrative, sometimes with simple facts, other times with instinctive logic, but always with truthful, honest debate. I believe the perspective I provide my listeners is indeed unique. Tune in to Blow and Smoke with yours truly, AJ Gaynor, on the Talk America Radio Network and at talkamericaradio.us.
Hi, this is Donna Fiducia.
And Don Neuen from Cowboy Logic Radio. Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't go to sleep every night completely fatigued from trying to restore America from the destruction that is taking place,
then you're simply not doing enough. Join us every Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, for Cowboy Logic Radio.
Let the restoration begin.
Chris X Radio, weekday mornings at 10 Eastern, on the Talk America Radio Network.
Congressman Alan West joining us.
Well, thanks so much, Chris.
We're talking with Brigitte Gabrielle.
Oh, Chris, I am delighted to be with you.
Ted Nugent is here.
My pleasure, and congratulations with your show. I'm proud to be on it with you, Chris.
Listen to Chris X Radio, weekday mornings at 10 Eastern, right here on the Talk America Radio Network.
You're listening to your local news source, WLBB, News Talk 1330 and FM 106.3.
Hey, everybody, they're back on again.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts, when their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glares. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance.
Welcome back to Cowboy Logic Radio. I'm Donna Fiducia, along with Don Neuen. And our very special guest for this final segment of the show is Mr. Richard Manning. And Richard, your organization pretty much says it all, and it's what most patriotic Americans are thinking. The name of your organization, of which you are the president of, is Americans for Limited Government. All I can say is, yes, that's pretty much what we need. Richard, welcome back to Cowboy Logic Radio.
Thanks for having me, Don. Thanks for having me, Donna.
So let's start, first of all, with, things just happen so fast. It's like in 2 days, it's old news. We got the tax deal passed, at least in the Congress, toward the end of last week. In your opinion, good or bad?
I think it's a mixed bag, truthfully. It's not a silver bullet for the Republicans like they think it is, because there are a lot of elements in it that are going to cause some people some confusion. As we look at it, as we get to a final recipe here, we'll have a much better idea. But right now, there are winners and there are losers, and a lot of the losers are people who vote for Republicans. So it's becomes a little bit challenging, but they are going to reform it. They're going to make it. The best part about it, the business taxes are going to go down. I think the economy is going to be bolstered because of that. But the individual tax side is a mixed bag.
Yeah, the business side of it does look good. But to me, the bigger picture is very scary, because you're going to penalize the big money people in what is currently the blue states. Like, you've got some people that, are in the Northeast in California who are going to be really quite upset because they can't write off all their high property taxes and all the state and local government, the SALT, as they call it, state and local government taxes. And what that's going to do is people vote with their feet.
They're going to move to red states, and we don't want them.
I don't want them down here in Georgia. I'm nervous about that,
They're
Richard.
already moving. They're already moving, and you know that. Businesses are fleeing California now, and many of them are coming to Texas, and it is odd. You have this phenomenon where people leave a place because it's not livable anymore because of the government, and then somehow they come to the new place and they say, "Gee, why isn't the government doing all this stuff?" And you say, "No, you don't understand. That's why you left the old place." But hopefully they bring their kids get raised in the right way, and suddenly you end up with a transforming the country as it moves south.
That's what we can hope for. I'll tell you, we're actually going to be talking to a Puerto Rican next week whose family was devastated by what happened in Puerto Rico. His father died of injuries sustained because he couldn't get decent medical coverage even in recent weeks, months after this hurricane. And I think that's going to flip Florida because the Puerto Ricans that can't afford it moved out and moved to South Florida. I mean, this is, to me...
Explain, Lucy.
You're so bad. Yes, Ricky. So, so much is...
Explain, Lucy. You got a lot of explaining to do, Lucy.
No, he was Puerto Rican. I mean, he was Cuban, honey. He was...
Oh, was he?
Yes. Ricky Ricardo.
Hey, when they're absolutely inundating Florida, I guess it really doesn't matter whether it's a Puerto Rican or a Cuban now, huh?
They're going to vote Democrat.
Well, actually, it does. Cuban refugees vote Republican.
Yeah, all my Cuban friends do.
The Cubans, yeah, but not the Puerto Ricans. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. This is scary. This is scary stuff. After Hurricane...
Well, we know that you bring up a great point. There was a big play in Florida before the last election where there was an attempt, a pretty aggressive attempt to really mobilize the Puerto Rican community in the state of Florida. It kind of fell flat. Hillary wasn't the candidate for them, but that was a very real political effort by the Democrats, and they know who's Puerto Rican, and they're going for it. Now, one thing I know is that supplemental that the president has just put in is another $44 billion for Puerto Rico and Virgin Islands. The challenge in Puerto Rico is their infrastructure got wiped out. You had no electricity across the island. You had all of the infrastructure that you normally depend upon to be able to get around got wiped out. And many people who lived in the central parts of the island were very isolated and remain so. And so it's a very challenging situation. We're pouring personnel and dollars into it, but the fact is, it remains a challenging situation that you can imagine if you didn't have electricity for long periods of time anywhere. Mm-hmm. You would have you'd have a devastating impact on the economy, and no matter who's president, there's only so much you can do, and there's I'm sure the governor in Puerto Rico has been working hard to try to fix it, and I know that that the FEMA people have been on the ground from day one, trying to lend assistance, but it is fact is, when places get devastated and infrastructure is gone, it becomes it becomes untenable. And whether there's political ramifications or not, I can't tell.
The bigger picture, when you look at Puerto Rico, though, is that it was pretty lousy to begin with because it really was a banana republic, a lot of corruption there already, and that was the biggest problem. But now I see it as a wake-up call for the United States. God forbid North Korea lobs one in, will be Puerto Rico. And
that's exactly right.
And that's so scary. We are so vulnerable. What is Americans for Limited Government, President Richard Manning, doing as far as trying to wake up the government as vis-a-vis protecting the grid?
Well, we've done a lot of stuff on the electricity grid, actually, and it's particularly as it relates to growing the economy, because you need to have an electrical grid that's pretty robust in order to do that. In terms of the protecting the grid, it is an enormous financial undertaking, and it's kind of caught because the costs of protecting the grid, of doing the grid hardening, are extremely high. However, I do believe that individual utilities need to be acting accordingly and going and doing what they're supposed to do. And the United States government should identify key places where the hardening of the grid would make it so you'd limit damage. It had a widespread outage due to an EMP, electromagnetic pulse weapon, and that's what they should be doing. I work with some people who are working on that every day. It's a tough issue. It's expensive, and we don't have any money. So it becomes a real problem. But yes, the government should make it a priority because, quite honestly, it's one of those things like insurance. It only matters if you don't have it. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things that we face an existential threat through one EMP above one city can black out essentially the entire country and destroy and kill hundreds of millions of people.
How much did you say that we were giving to Puerto Rico?
The supplemental that the president put in yesterday was $44 billion. That's on top of of another 39 or so that they've already spent on Texas and Florida. If I remember correctly, it was around $75 billion right now in terms of what they're looking at. Congress has to pass the supplemental, but they'll be at 75 to 80 billion by the time with those two supplementals. They're going to come back with another Texas and Florida supplemental, including California fires, and it's anticipated that that'll run another 100 billion to 120 billion. All told, spending on emergency spending being around $200 billion, none of it offset, which is a disaster economically because it's going to shove the government into around the $1 trillion range for budget deficit for this year.
Exactly. All right. Now, my understanding after talking to various subject matter experts that we've had regarding EMPs is that we can protect the grid for the United States at a basic level of $2 billion and at a military grade level of $20 billion. My question, and I'm not questioning you on this, but I'm rather throwing this out for discussion, is if we're going to send $45 billion down to Puerto Rico to help them out in aid, why don't we send them $25 billion and keep $20 billion for the United States and protect the grid at a military grade level?
Well, I think there's a good point here because we are spending over $4 trillion overall, not just counting emergency spending. We're spending over $4 trillion. And you'd think with something that's an existential threat to the country that people would be able to prioritize, the Congress would be able to prioritize and put $2 billion or $20 billion into hardening the grid in such a way that if the most horrible circumstance occurred, we wouldn't suffer hundreds of millions of casualties and deaths due to an inability for our basic infrastructure to run. America's uniquely dependent upon electricity, and if it gets destroyed, people won't know how to act, and you won't have food supplies, and it will become ugly really quick. So seems like a reasonable investment. Let me tell you where I think you could get it. In the House bill, the House funding bill had it $60 billion for upgrading defense, increasing defense spending. The Senate bill was $80 billion, and essentially they agreed on the $80 billion. There's going to be a fight in December over the defense spending, whether they're going to actually appropriate the $80 billion extra. And if it were me, I would take a look on the defense side and say the Defense Department gets $60 billion, but the $20 billion extra goes to hardening the grid. And on the other side, I would offset the spending by not increasing any domestic spending at all, which the House and Senate will be tempted to do. But instead, I would look to cut on the domestic side, taking a look at President Trump's budget of $4.5 trillion of budget cuts over 10 years, and take a look at that and draw from that to make the cuts to offset those costs, so we could end up with a at least having a chance of not having $1 trillion budget deficit this year.
Well, I mean, clearly we could probably spend a show for the next entire year on talking about trying to rein in government waste and irresponsible spending. I mean, first thing that always comes to my mind is however much money we sent over to Africa to teach African men how to wash their genitalia. You know,
the waste
I mean, the waste is a joke. But, getting back to earmarking up to $20 billion to protect the grid, and those numbers, just so that you know, Richard, are coming from Dr. Peter Vincent Pry, who is obviously one of the leading experts on electromagnetic pulse, along with Claire Lopez from Frank Gaffney's organization.
Yeah. Yep, and I know Claire real well.
You know, the bottom line from what we understand, and this, I don't want to turn this into an EMP show, but the bottom line is the electrical company lobbyists are not wanting to do this.
Just makes no sense. Everything is upside down. Why would you not want to do this? We're talking with Richard Manning. He's president of Americans for Limited Government. Just the name of your organization, Richard,
is so attractive.
Awesome. All right, let's look at
and let me tell you, it's one of the challenges here in this discussion is, it really comes down to the role of government when you get to this discussion, because from a budget standpoint, I have a really hard time saying we should spend an extra $20 billion when just last year alone we spent $27 billion extra dollars on interest payments than we did the year before. So we have a massive problem in terms of our debt that's going to destroy the country. On the other hand, we have a massive threat in terms of the EMPs that would destroy the country, and there's not a lot we can do about it unless we force a hardening of the grid. And it's a government function to protect the people of the country from those kinds of attacks. So it is a core government function, and it seems to me that you almost have to do it, and the way to get there is to take it from the increases in the defense budget. Yeah. It is a defense budget.
The North Korean thing aside, we're overdue for a solar flare, a natural phenomenon. And that's what happened back in the late 1800s, but nobody felt it because all it did was blow out the Morse code and all that other stuff.
Well, and there's one other way to do this outside of just say going to the defense budget. You can whittle away at things,
right,
and
that's what I was
you can chip away. I mean, how much did we learn last week was being spent of our taxpayer money to basically erase any type of sexual harassment in Congress?
Well,
what was that, 15.2 million?
That's $15 million right there. The Obama administration spent over $1 billion just on advertising for Obamacare. I mean, this is unbelievable. And and speaking of that, Richard, I wanted to ask you about this. The outgoing IRS commissioner, Koskinen, the slime bucket that he is, implemented the small business penalty for not having Obamacare, that was not offering an Obamacare compliant health care system for their employees. Now, in 2014, 15, and 16, he just so happened to waive that. Why? Because Obama was president. But the very last day he was in office last week, he re-implemented it for 2017. And that supposedly is going to cost small businesses... Well, for last year, I'm sorry. Small businesses, another, I think I heard 30 to 40 billion. I mean, this guy, it's just unbelievable to me how corrupt the government is and what's going on, and nobody talks about it.
Well, it is pretty unbelievable, actually. And when you think about it, the fact that one individual has the capacity to cause $30 to $40 billion worth of damage simply by making a decision on a waiver or not tells you everything about why government's too large. Hopefully the new IRS acting commissioner will in fact deal with that and undo what Koskinen, the president that Koskinen left him. But that goes to the bigger problem, and the bigger problem is that you have things happening like, I'll give you a simple example. Jeff Sessions yesterday announced that he was ending sue and settle agreements, whereby the bureaucrats would sit there and they'd do a deal with environmentalists in particular, and they'd say, sue us on something. We don't like what the law says we have to do. So the environmentalists would sue. The government would then agree with the environmentalists. They'd go to find a friendly judge. They'd sign a consent decree, and they'd change the law by judicial fiat. Jeff Sessions says that's over. Why does that matter from a financial perspective? Because the sue and settle laws say that the people who sued the government get paid for having sued the government to undo for redress. So we were actually paying people to sue us to strangle our private property rights. That's Jeff Sessions is ending that. We had a situation where the mortgage bankers had all these lawsuits against them. The Justice Department settled them, and they gave the mortgage bankers you could give the U.S. government $1, or you could give La Raza $2. And we'll count it, or $1, and we'll count it as if you gave the government $2. So they were giving them 2-to-1 credit for giving money to far left advocacy groups, and it totaled millions of dollars. That wasn't government money; it was government settlement money that should have gone to the government treasury. Instead, it went to third-party radical activists.
Well, that's how they greatly enhanced the coffers of the far left and all of their ilk. That's what I want to know, Richard Manning, is where an additional, $8 trillion went in 8 years. We went from, what was the debt when Bush left office, and it's been doubled just in the last 8 years under Obama?
Yeah.
Where did it go?
Yeah, it was about $10 trillion.
Okay, $10 trillion. The infrastructure certainly didn't benefit. Where'd all that money go?
Where did it go?
Well, $150 billion of it went to Iran. We know that.
Yeah, it went a lot of places, but it primarily was going to. You remember the shovel-ready jobs?
Yeah, they weren't shovel-ready.
Stimulus.
Yeah.
Well, where that money went, it went to state governments that were having a hard time paying their public employees, and so it went to keep public employees at the state level employed, rather than shovel-ready jobs that basically kept the public employee unions happy. You saw a flattening, and this is for 3 years. We spent around $3.6 trillion for 3 straight years. That was because of the Budget Control Act that the Republicans put into place, and Obama was forced to take. But now they're busy breaking the Budget Control Act caps, and now they're up to $4.1 trillion, and literally a blink of an eye.
We need to drain the swamp. Both sides suck. I'm sorry.
That's right. You're not wrong there. Most of the spending in the federal government, though, goes to about 70% goes to mandatory programs, and mandatory programs aren't really mandatory. It's just Congress that says we're not going to deal with them in our regular budget, and we're just going to have them be on autopilot. And that's things like Social Security and Medicare and SSI disability and any number of other programs, plus paying interest payments on the debt, which is about about $400 billion total. And so those kinds of things are, they add up. We're paying about 10% of our total budget is paid for simply paying interest payments on our debt. So the money's going out the door, and we're very fortunate we have low interest rates, because if interest rates were at normal levels, that number would be in the $1 trillion range right now, in terms of debt interest payments.
And that interest rate is coming up. It's going to come up.
Richard Manning, is there any, and this is a bit of a trick question, obviously, a humorous question, but is there any business that you can even remotely concoct that could operate with the level of irresponsibility of the federal government?
Yes, so it would be a counterfeit money business, because since you're printing the money, you can waste as much as you want.
Is there a legal business?
Excellent answer. Thank you. You made my night.
We only have a little over a minute left, Richard. Let me ask you one thing. First, two questions, actually. I contend that we could cut government 10% across the board and nobody except the government would feel it. Certainly the taxpayers would. Number one, is that possible? And because they're not talking about cutting spending with this tax deal. And number two, what do you think is the biggest government waste recently?
On the discretionary side, absolutely, you could cut 10%, nobody would notice. On the mandatory side, you would have wailing and gnashing of teeth as people's Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security checks would be impacted. So on the discretionary side, which remember is about 32% of the budget, you could cut 10% without blinking an eye. If you left defense out of it, you're really cutting on the 17% of the budget. At that point, you're looking at relatively about a $16 billion cut, 10% of the discretionary budget, or non-discretionary, non-defense budget. So yes, you cut that without blinking an eye, but it's a drop in the bucket in the overall problem.
But then how do they get votes?
Yeah, exactly. So what's
how do they get voted back in? That's all they care about.
Just remember, just like we were talking on the EMP thing, just because it seems like a drop in the bucket, it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. Okay, because it's a bunch of drops in the bucket that fill the bucket.
Just like Senator
that 10% idea is exactly the thing we should do. But remember that amount of money that you're going to save. Let's say it's $30 billion. Let's say it's $50 billion. You've spent 20% of it hardening your EMP this year. So it's really prioritizing the money. That's what it is. It's prioritizing the money, and we need to do at least the business side of the tax cut, so we invigorate our economy, we get more revenues downstream, we create more jobs, and we have an opportunity to grow ourselves out of this mess that we're in, because we're going to have to grow ourselves out of it, and that means we need robust economic growth, and that's why Donald Trump cutting the regulations and trying to cut taxes, particularly on business, are going to make a big difference in terms of where our budget situation is 3 years from now and where our economy is 3 years from now.
Well, that certainly sums it up. Richard Manning, president of Americans for Limited Government. The time always goes by way too fast, and I always like to close the show with a slogan, but as we talk to you, this just happened to come to my mind. I believe it was Senator Edward Dirksen many, many years ago who said, "A million here and a million there. Pretty soon you're talking about real money." Well, now it's like a trillion here and a trillion there. Now you're talking about real money, and it really does have to stop. And hopefully your organization, Richard Manning, is at the forefront to try to wake up the American people to the quote-unquote waste.
Give the website out before we go, Donna. I just want to make sure.
Americans for Limited Government. What is the website there, Richard?
GetLiberty.org. GetLiberty.org.
GetLiberty.org. GetLiberty.org. Folks, check that out. Again, Richard Manning, President of Americans for Limited Government. Thanks for joining us here on Cowboy Logic Radio. And that wraps
My pleasure.
That wraps up another show, folks. The time just flies by. We'll see you next Tuesday. Check us out at cowboylogic.us and talkamericaradio.us. And God bless America.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. Their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glance. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance, yes. When cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. When their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glance. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance.
Check us out on the web at cowboylogic.us.